So stuff has happened in the country. Kenya Railways is reclaiming its land, okay, in several parts of the country. Traders, especially in Nakuru, in Kisumu, have faced the wrath. So, what has happened? Let's just start with this story. Page 12 and 13 of the Standard. Loangi Beach in Kisumu became the first victims of the demolitions, in which at least 20 eateries were brought down. Then we also saw traders secured spaces at Dunga Beach, about 5 kilometers away. We have seen other estates that have been affected. Demolitions in Makasembo Estate in Kisumu town. We have seen demolitions in Kamau Way in Nakuru town, where buildings, and these look like old estates, have been demolished. In Kibos, which is also in Kisumu County, demolitions happened from last Friday, and this has affected over 3,000 people in this particular area. Among the stories that are covered in the Standard today is about elders who are condemning the demolition of a historical mosque. This mosque is over 100 years old, one of the structures that was brought down by Kenya Railways last Friday to pave way for the renovation of the Nakuru-Kisumu railway line. One of the people who worked at this mosque is 64-year-old Khalifa Hamis, who has not conducted Salah at this mosque for quite a while. He's one of the elders of this mosque. He says, we have been here for a while. Our children come here from madrasa community. This started as a small mosque. It has become bigger over time as, you know, the population increased, and as the population grew, now we saw the members of the Nubian community were the biggest casualties of the demolitions. 3,000 people affected, and they've since been living in tents provided by the Kenya Red Cross about 600 meters from their demolished homes. Not structures, not at the roadside. This is where they have lived for many, many years. So when you see this happening, and now Kenya Railways tweeted a statement yesterday saying the land reclamation being carried out in parts of Nyanza, Rift Valley and Western is being done in good faith to provide a safe corridor for railway operations. It says prior to the exercise, which started in 2019, necessary engagements through various channels had been done to allow the affected persons time and space to have their concerns heard and for them to seek alternative places to live or work. Safety is our priority, according to Kenya Railways. As a provider of transport solutions, we move different types of goods along our network, including dangerous cargo, and therefore we need to secure a safe corridor for operations to protect lives and secure goods while in transit. The state agency said the demolition is for the benefit and for the prosperity of Kenyans.
Which Kenyans exactly? Because
you and I,
from what we have read, what has actually happened with the demolition is the complete opposite of what they claim to be sponsoring and putting across.
Yeah.
And anyway, there are details as to whether they gave adequate notice, whether they informed the community. But the thing that comes to mind, 100-year-old mosque, almost as old as the city itself, the city of Kisumu. So which came first, the railway or the mosque? Now, we know the railway reached Kisumu in 1902.
It was the founder of the town.
Yes. So, which means that mosque came there not very long after.
Almost as old as the city itself.
Yes, exactly.
And for all these years, they have been there. They
even when we had a railway that was plying that route for the longest time, that mosque has been there. This thing that has changed, what exactly is it? And when you're talking about people encroaching on railway land, did they just encroach on one specific day and suddenly there was space and then suddenly they had encroached? It did not happen over a period of time. Now, what on earth was Kenya Railway doing when all this was happening?
And there's also the bigger story of when you say that you've had, you know, constructive engagement, necessary engagement through various channels since 2019. We're in 2021. I'm sure Kenya Railways could come even here with records and show we had engagements here and there and at this point, and we agreed with the community this is what's going to happen. Did you actually have a conversation about what happens to the mosque?
It would be good to actually have someone from the railway answering those questions. But if you're going to take that discussion, we have estates in Nairobi here. One of them is Golden Estate.
Yeah.
Okay? In the direction where you see my hand is pointing. It was railway land. Okay? So why was that not reclaimed? There's a lot of railway land in major cities in this major towns in this country. All right? The question that one has to ask, and I'm asking it, what railway land are you reclaiming? Are there specific lands? Are there specific lands with proximity to the actually rail itself or the railway line? Or is it general railway land? What are the details of this land that you're reclaiming? There is a part of the railway properties in Nairobi that formed the go-downs that they had. It's not far from where the original railway station, Nairobi railway station was, okay? There has been the to and fro discussions around it. What am I saying? If you were to honestly and genuinely look at what constitutes railway property in this country, the railway was one of the biggest landowners in this country. Biggest. So, which lands are we speaking of?
For now, we are looking at where the rail actually passes, and we want to secure that for safety of everybody and the goods being transported. Anyway, let's bring in Irungu Houghton, the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya, who has been engaging with the residents of Kibos who have been affected by these demolitions. And we'll also be speaking to one of the residents, the Kibos community representative. Her name is Fatuma Bilali. Let's start with Irungu. Good morning, Irungu.
Good morning, Spice team.
Happy New Year to
I'm
you.
Here in Kisumu. Happy New Year. Unfortunately, not so happy for the people of Kibos.
No. Obviously.
True.
A lot has happened there. Just paint for us the picture of what you've been on the ground for a while. You've seen the demolitions. You've seen the impact that this has had on the community itself. Just tell us what's happening there.
So we, Amnesty International, dispatched a team to Kisumu, and we're camped here for the week. We spent the whole day yesterday in Kibos. It is really a desperate situation. I think the Kisumu governor has called it a human settlement disaster. Let me just try and create it in terms of an image for the listeners. It's 3,500 people in an area of about 10 or so acres had their homes demolished. Really over 6 hours. The demolition started at 10:30, so 30 minutes after curfew. Armed officers arrived in the community. They were about 50 in number. They came in lorries and in Land Rovers. And they proceeded over the next 6 hours to destroy, in some cases, 13 years of investment by some of the residents. I've talked to people who left the country 13 years ago, essentially worked in the UAE, trying to build up some savings. They came back, they built a home for themselves and for their relatives or their siblings. And they watched that 13-year investment be destroyed in six hours. I've talked to people over the age of 80 who are stunned. I mean, one of the things that I never get used to as a director of Amnesty is really just seeing people's eyes being so vacant. They have lost hope, displaced in their own country. And let me just describe the homes. These are not mud houses. These are permanent structures. Some of them have 3 to 4 rooms. There was the 2 nurseries that were established by the county government. These houses had electricity. They had water, connected by the water companies. So these were very much legitimate communities. We're talking about a community that has been here since 1938. This is not the first time this community, and it's important that the identity of the community also be shared, which is this is largely a Nubian community. This is a community of essentially people who were in the army, they were police officers, they were administrators during the colonial period, and the first place that they were given to settle is now the current site of the Kisumu airport. So in 1938, they were moved from that space to Kibos, where they have been up to date. And one of the questions that we have to ask is why was this violence visited on this community with no real strategy for resettlement prior to the mass forced eviction of Kibos?
Irungu, if I may ask, this land that they have been living in, do they have a legal status? Do they have title deeds?
No, it seems that they were settled without the provision of legal title. So although they have been there for 83 years, which is really kind of almost that's almost like 3 generations of this community, there is no legal title as far as we know. But the 2 human rights organizations, Haki Jamii and Haki Africa, have gone to court to basically focus on the legal ownership of the land. And sadly, it looks like the Ministry of Interior moved to preempt conservatory orders that were expected by a court this morning. And the community and Amnesty and other human rights organizations like Haki Africa will be in court this morning. But sadly, we will be talking about rubble and mabatis that have been burnt, and this tragic case. Yes, I mean they threw tear gas, no less than 10 tear gas canisters to disperse people over that night. Last night it was raining very hard. I slept in a room, and I just really felt for this community. I can't believe that people would be left out in the rain when less than a week ago they were sitting in their own homes.
The humanitarian aspects we can't ignore, Irungu. I mean, that clearly we have, like you said, people who slept in their homes a week ago and then now are sleeping outside. Look at, issues of young children and such. So did it, I mean, we've talked about the fact that in terms of legality of documentation, they did not have. But was this the way to go about it? If for some minute we can even look at the other side of it, would this have been the only way? We hear about the engagement that they would have had on the side of Kenya Railways or on other government agencies. Would this have been the only way that they could have moved people from this land?
No, I mean, internationally there are standards for resettling people during an eviction. And, the community of Kibos, even in their trauma and their pain, will argue that, infrastructural development is important. But unfortunately, this infrastructural investment has landed on their head. In fact, in the case of one child, one minor who we are trying to locate, that minor died as their home collapsed over their head. So there is one fatality killed by this operation. And I think the question we have to ask is, why weren't, for example, the guidelines that have been developed as far back as 2009, the eviction and resettlement guidelines, why weren't those followed? But even if we, didn't expect that of the Ministry of Transport or Transport Ministry, I think the question is, there are three very basic things that you do in terms of a relocation. The first is that you have to give adequate notice. The second is that the process eviction has to be guided by a court order. Thirdly, it should not happen at night, which this did. It should not happen in inclement weather. There has to be provisions for young people, children, people with disabilities. I saw at least 3 people with disabilities yesterday as we walked through the rubble of this community, where this community used to be. And there has to be, provision for, I guess, places that have important sacred quality. This 83-year-old mosque that has been destroyed, it's just a tragedy. And I think I looked across from the mosque and I could see a church on the other side, outside of this zone, that was not touched, but it is even closer to the railway line. So this community is asking, were we targeted? Are we second-class citizens as Nubians? And unfortunately, I think this buck stopped at the door of the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, and I think it also stopped at the doorstep of the Transport Cabinet Secretary, James Macharia. Both of them have to explain to the nation whether this was approved by Cabinet, or rather the County Commissioner and the Kenya Railways Managing Director acted without direction. And I remind the country that there was a moratorium issued on all evictions during COVID-19. That was on the 11th of May, 2020. And that was issued by the Interior Cabinet Secretary himself.
Should we find that they did, Irungu, should we find that they did act out of turn? With all these other things that you've put out here, the moratorium that you speak of, which we all saw come into effect, should we find that they acted out of turn, what could it mean for these folks now who are living through this tragedy?
I'll respond to that, Duko. Just, I think it's also good to bring in Fatuma, who is here. She's very much, I call her a historian of the community. She knows the community very intimately. But I think that are required. The first is essentially that the land that they have been moved to, courtesy of the county government of Kisumu, it is important to establish the land title for that property, so that if they are going to be moved there permanently, that the land be titled and given to the community as a community title, so that they are no longer this temporary community that can be displaced whenever we want to bring in a railway or an airport or a road. And then the second thing I think that's important would be to ensure that there is compensation for people. The amount of damage to people's homes is ridiculous. I sat in the rubble of a sitting room yesterday of a gentleman by the name of Abdul Mohammed, who, again, had worked in UAE for 13 years to build his house. And he told me that he would have loved to invite me to sit with him and have a cup of tea. But now we were just sitting on rubble. So compensation is the second demand. The third one really is that we have to see accountability for this. We need the cabinet secretaries to tell us who is responsible for the action that was taken on Friday night. It was during COVID-19, it was during a curfew, it was taken at night, and there were no provisions for protection, and one child has been killed in this operation. So we need to see disciplinary action of the officers that were involved in this, or an acceptance that actually this is the necessary way of doing infrastructure development, that people have to die and their homes have to be destroyed in order for us to progress or be a modern nation. But as Amnesty International, I think we're just shocked and horrified by this, and we hope that the National Assembly take action to hold the executive accountable.
Did you say National Assembly?
I said the National Assembly because we are
of
still
which country, Irungu?
This one, unless it has been dissolved.
No, it's alive and well, but it's what you're seeking and hoping it will do, to censure the executive, our parliament. Okay,
yeah, I have no hope.
This I wait to see.
I have no hope. I have a demand that is a legitimate public demand on people we elect to protect us. There is no point having a National Assembly if it cannot protect people from mass forced eviction.
The one thing they've been doing consistently for the longest time now is doing precisely that, not protecting the citizenry. So, anyway, one should always hope, Irungu. One should always hope.
Never give up hope.
No, we shouldn't give up hope.
Kenya Railways has issued a statement this morning, and they even tweeted yesterday, and they said that they've been engaging with the community. So let's bring in one of the community representatives from here, Fatuma Bilali. Asante sana kwa kuzungumza nazi, Fatuma. Habari ya leo?
Nzuri sana, habari yako?
Salama kabisa. Sasa Kenya Railways wanasema kwamba tangu mwaka wa 2019, miaka miwili iliyopita, wamekuwa wakizungumza na jamii ambazo wangetaka ziondoke, na wamesema wamekuwa kuambia haya, tutakuja kubomoa siku fulani, muondoke, na wakajadiliana na nyinyi vile mtahama. Ni ukweli ama ni uongo?
Ni urongo. Nakumbuka vizuri 2019 Januari walikuja tu peke yao, wakaenda tu kwa village elder peke yake, wakaenda around kwa along our boundary without the community knowing anything which is happening within the community. Wakamaliza kwenda around, alafu wakashika njia yao wakaenda. By then we asked our village elder what is happening, but he didn't tell us. He just said that the Kenya Railway want to mark their boundary. Na ukiona boundary hiyo ni mbali sana na mali yetu, because our boundary, according to the map, the former British map, the land of railway is, the number is 654 LR, alafu yetu Nubian is 655 LR. So there's a boundary between Nubian and the railway line. So we failed to understand. On 2019, when they came again, they went on and gave notice to business people along their boundary. But to Nubian community, they didn't give any notice at all. So we were wondering, just as, how comes that the Kenya Railway is now evicting us without any notice?
So, Fatuma, since this happened on Friday, and now people are homeless, all this other drama happening, has anyone spoken to you from Kenya Railways, from government, from Ministry Transport, Ministry Interior? Has anybody spoken to the community to even acknowledge what has happened?
No, because on Friday it was around 5 when they came, and the same day they came and put the mark for the whole structure within the community. they marked all the houses for demolition. When the community also came up asking them, why are they marking the houses? Because our houses is very far from the railway line. So the county commissioner was the one with the security officer, and she was given a court order, and she refused even to take the court order. The person who took the court order was the DC from Moroni. And after then, at night at around 10:30, again they came with many security officers to start demolition. And the tear gas, even the tear gas affected children and children, plus old mothers. So it was a very difficult night, and the electricity was put off. There's no way the majority of us can even find how they can move the properties out of the house.
Fatuma, just coming back to you and the background that were initially given by Irungu on how long this community has lived in on this particular piece of land. Since 1938, have there been any talks or conversations with community leaders and the government on you getting title or actual ownership or recognition to be the occupants of this particular land? From whatever, from even the independence government, the Moi administration, Kibaki administration, Uhuru?
Yes, because since 1938, we have been living in peace with Kenya Railway Authority. And when our fathers died, they didn't try to make a follow-up of acquiring title deed. But it was on 2011 when we felt that it is not safe for us to stay in an area without having any ownership of land. We started the process of acquiring title deed. In fact, we have all the documents. The demarcation was done because our land was 109 acres, which we were given by colonial government. Part of the land was taken by KARI, which is Kenya Research Institute. It is 92 acres. But the current acreage which we are living is only 17 acres. Not even 17, it is 14. Because part of it also was taken by individual government. After that, we started the process, and we included National Land Commissioner. We did everything. Our plan was passed by Minister Ngilu by then on 2015, and it was approved. And even it was put to Kenya Gazette notice for 3 months for anybody who has a claim, but there was nobody who came up with a complaint of the land. So we were waiting for title deed to be given for the community up to now. Fortunately, we heard that Kenya Railway is claiming that the land belongs to them. And when 2 officers of the Kenya Railway, in fact, not even 2 officers, last year on July 31st, they came. They didn't have even a public participation meeting. Yes, they just went around and said that those who live within their boundary to live. I asked one of the railway officers, because we have our boundary, Nubian community and Kenya Railway community. One of them told me that they will just focus on their boundary. They will not reach our area. So on January, we failed to understand. They came, they said that they will take the whole land of Nubian community. When we asked them how, because their boundary is there, they said that they will come with a map. Even we have the map which shows a proper boundary. When they came, there is a map, but the map which they are showing us does not show the actual map we have. There's a map which shows our boundary, but when they come with the map, that map does not show the accurate place of Kenya Railway. So we have all documents which we started with acquiring the title deed. All documents we have. And again, if the letters which we were given by British government, We have all documents with us. That can prove our land is not for Kenya Railway land. Yeah.
Fatuma, when you went through these processes with the Ministry of Lands, did they ever give you an allotment letter? Any letter stating that this land was actually now being allocated to you?
Yeah, we have. Even when the Kenya Railway came and started threatening us, we went and met with the National Land Commissioner, which they said that they will write a letter to headquarters Nairobi for them to come together with the Kenya Railway and have a dialogue meeting for them to come at the ground to see where the boundary of the Kenya Railway and Nubian community is. But they were supposed to give us an allotment letter, but we are not yet being given. Yeah.
Okay, so the county government of Kisumu has stepped in, has given temporary a place to stay now. Is that an option to say, I mean, I hear you saying that we want to hold on to the land that we have been given. The structures that have been put on that place have been destroyed. Now, if county government of Kisumu has stepped in and said, all right, for now, have this, despite the pain and all of this difficulty right now, is it an option? And then to start pursuing ownership and to say, give us something permanent, even if we have to move away from here. Is that an option? Or are we saying that no, that which we were allotted before, we must stay with that?
Yes, what we want our land which we are staying in. We are asking the government to give us the ownership of our land. And what we were wondering, because the county commissioner, when we met the county commissioner, Madam Josephine, she told us that she's not aware of anything with the Kenya Railway. Let us just focus on our land where we are living and let Kenya Railway continue with their project within their land. But we failed to understand how the county commissioner came and even distract our structures and our business areas.
I find this really very confusing because why now? I mean, if Kalro, Kari is now called Kalro, if they're neighbors, and I'm sure there are other neighbors around there, okay? And if there's an LR number, a land record number, it follows there for that the issue of a title deed shouldn't even exist. Meaning, the process is what may have delayed, but from what Fatuma tells us, they have gone through processes of ensuring that they get this title allocated to them. Now, with all those processes, how then does one come about and demolish a property without taking into consideration everything else that has actually been there in place?
The conversations, the steps that have been taken, even for those steps to take so long, we're talking about since independence.
Yes.
This community has been going to talk to the government saying, all right, so you moved us from this land, which was about 109 acres before. Now you've put up an airport there, you've put up a research institute there, you've moved us to this particular piece of land.
Us, yes.
It's 14 acres. Now, can you regularize this particular piece of land? This community has been going to the government on that. The formation of the National Land Commission with the new constitution 2010, and they've even engaged the National Land Commission. They say we are doing a report and taking the report to the headquarters. And then if a community is not getting the feedback that it deserves to get from the government, the next thing you're hearing is people who are coming with a different map and saying, according to our map, this is our land.
The thing was, in the Kenya Gazette, the requisite period during which one was supposed to raise an objection, no objection was raised.
Yes.
So, that time lapsed. So it moves on to the next stage. And then, after all that, somebody then determines that they should actually now just occupy the land. The question I'm asking is, forget what? Why does somebody want this land? Because it is clear in my mind that there are people who want this land. And damn the people who actually occupy this land.
People here is people other than Kenya Railways.
Kenya Railways is a front. I asked the question, if Kenya Railway is genuinely focusing on getting land that it belongs to it, okay? They're saying along the railway lines, Kenya Railway for the longest time was a national asset. Okay? So anything that Kenya Railway has owned in terms of land, why don't we just talk about this thing wholesomely and say, okay, what did Kenya Railway land, what was Kenya Railway land and property in this country? Let's talk about where did that land go to? Who owns it now? What is it being used for? You want to have that discussion? This is a discussion you should
And
have.
again, I want to add something.
Please.
Okay, I want to add something. Because when we were reallocated in another land, that land does not belong to county government. The land belongs to individuals. Even yesterday at night, it rained. We couldn't sleep. Children couldn't sleep. The area is flooded. It is watery. As young children today, some yesterday went to school, and today they couldn't even go to school. There is no way. Old mamas are crying. So we don't know how we can live in that place, because when the county government came just one day, up to now, the county government cannot be seen. We are really suffering. Even some of the children today, this morning, some of them are sick. Even an old mama, there's a neighbor who is going to help that old mama with even a room where she can sleep, because we couldn't even sleep. The area, the mattress which we were given, all is water. Even the blanket, even the tent which we were given by Red Cross. In fact, Red Cross really helped us through tents, through food. They really
Fatuma, how many are you in total? The number of people who've been displaced, including children?
The number of people who are displaced is many, because the total is 3,500. But now some went to they were tenants. Some of them went even outside to find where they can live. And all the people, the Nubian community, are just in the tent. We are many. Even some children were taken somewhere else where it can be safe with their life. We are in a really bad situation. Even I just record.
Yeah, Fatima, just a question coming back to you. But Irungu, just looking at now in terms of mechanics, what absolutely now needs to happen? Because we're looking at a situation, again, humanitarian crisis, potential of other, terrible things happening as a result of this, where we have a large number of people living in a place where so many things will not work, from care to food to, water, etc., etc. At the same time, in terms of immediate interventions, what needs to happen now? And who needs to sit up and pay attention?
I think there are, thanks, Luca. I think there are four things that need to happen immediately. The first one, obviously, is a humanitarian response. I'd like to acknowledge the Kenya Red Cross that came in to support this community. They put up tents for some of the community to be able to survive. So there is shelter, there is protection, water, and food. So I think that humanitarian response needs to continue. The county government of Kisumu needs to establish that they do have full control over the land that the community has been assigned, and move to quickly giving them either, as you say, allotment letters or registering this land in the community's name, so that we do not see this community displaced a third time within living memory. The third thing that needs to happen is that there needs to be an investigation, an inquiry into how this has happened, because I think it is not just this community that faces that has experienced an eviction, but there will be others as the SDR is expanded. And I think places like Kibra, anywhere along the line that the SDR is going, where there is dense community, there is densification and communities, they are at risk. And just to be clear, there are several locations. I think we said this at the beginning of the top of the hour. There are several locations in Kisumu alone, including markets and settlements where people have been displaced en masse. And I think we need to have this managed in a more humane and a human rights manner. And again, just to emphasize, there is absolutely no reason for people to be evicted at night. In fact, it is only thieves that come at night to steal from others. It is not a legitimately elected government. And I think the government needs to restock and think through how it manages resettlement of communities in order to make way for investment, whether it be roads or railways. So I think this would be the fourth area. The fifth area, I think, is accountability. I mean, somebody has to be responsible for what happened. It cannot be one of these things that just happened and we all continued as normal. And just to mention, and it's a bit sarcastic, but I think, 6 senators were displaced over the weekend, and there was more media coverage, more public discussion, more public political interest, even within the National Assembly, with regards to those 6 senators that were displaced, and not the 3,500 people who are now homeless and are out in the cold. So I think accountability is a critical thing. There has to be a conversation of compensation. This community has to be compensated for the investment that they had made. It was private property. Many of them will not be able to recover from this investment. And again, I walked through the entire community the whole of yesterday afternoon, and all I could see was these blank stares, almost, Kenyans who have been emotionally displaced.
Yeah.
And for the Nubian community, this is even worse because there's been a history of Nubian community not being treated as full citizens, not given identity documents. Fortunately, in the case of this community, we established that many of them do have identity documents. But, the historical trauma of being a ethnic minority in this country makes this even more tragic.
Is there any merit to the argument that it's beyond just development of a railway line? Is there any merit that this community of people could be targeted over time? I mean, you talk about this being, it could be the third time in living memory of some of these, of an unfortunate situation for some of these people. Is there any merit to that argument?
Only an independent investigation would establish this. I mean, we know from the Truth Reconciliation Commission that there are minorities in this country that have been targeted historically, maybe not by specific individuals, not even specific administrations, but the cumulative weight of history has been negative for these communities. And I think the Nubian community is one of those. I mean, we've established, beyond reasonable doubt that these are not land grabbers. These are not people who stepped onto railway land or even public land to grab it for private interest. These are community residents who have been here for, as we say, 83 years. That is not a short period of time. And I think, there needs to be more investigation in terms of the allegations that the Kenya Railways are making. And we need to look at these 2 maps. And I have not seen the 2 maps, but I'm hoping that I will see them in court today. But that essentially that the boundaries and the beacons had been reframed after the community had moved there. So they were essentially trespassing on a land that a Nubian community had lived in for 8 decades.
For many, many years. Irungu, as we continue the conversation, you and Amnesty International shared with us some of the photos from the ground, and I think John will be showing that to our audience that's watching this on TV and online. But as a human rights organization, as you went to the ground, did you reach out to the county commissioner, to maybe officials of Kenya Railways to find out exactly what their side of the story could be? For example, the night demolition, was it preceded by any advance notice, for example, during the day, 24 hours earlier? Had there been any communication coming from the county commissioner or coming from the security agencies and Kenya Railways themselves? Have you spoken to any of these 2 institutions?
We reached out immediately, even before we came to Kisumu, to the Ministry of Interior at the highest level. We also reached out to the office of the county governor, essentially to just hear from them as duty bearers what their side of the story was. We chose yesterday to spend most of the day in Kibos listening to the communities. These are the affected people, and it is their perspective, I think, that really matters in a moment like this for us to understand this and then come back. We are requesting meetings with the county commissioner, the assistant county commissioner, both of whom were involved in the operation that took place. We will also reach out to the office of the county governor and his staff to understand that side of things. And then when we return to Nairobi, I do hope to see the CS for Interior and Transport on this matter. There are a number of parliamentarians who are concerned about this issue, and I think we will probably see some action in the National Assembly soon.
There is a law in this country that caters for a situation such as the one Kenya Railway seems to claim. If Kenya Railway claims that this is their land and they even have documentation for it, there is a simple matter of adverse possession. And if somebody has lived on your land, here it is 12 years, okay? And you have done nothing about it to show or to try and come to an understanding or ask them to leave, then that individual has some rights over that land. Now, we're not talking about 12 years here. We're talking about decades, not a decade, decades. So, from where I sit, it appears that those who forcibly removed this Kenyan community from their land broke not one law, but very many laws in this country. Now, is there any legal action being taken against them?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have to weigh the legal options, but I think, CT, you're correct. I mean, several laws have been broken, and even just the principle of justice has been, I just suffocated or punctured in this moment. And I think, the option of adverse possession is still open to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport to lead on this. And I don't think it should be managed at the level of the Managing Director of the Railways. I think
no, it's beyond the Managing Director.
It's an injustice. It has to be discussed in Cabinet. And I think, compensation can be offered. The community, as I say, are a humble community. But what was destroyed on Friday night was essentially all that they had. I'm told that one of the old men that I spoke to yesterday was rushed to hospital because of the adverse effects of this emotionally, and also he was in the community when they were being tear gassed and their homes destroyed. So there are a lot of people who are just very wounded, and this unfortunately will not go away unless it is resolved to the satisfaction of the community. And I think this issue is really an issue also for the local leadership, not just at the level of the county governor, but I think for the regional leadership. One of the things that was very shocking for me was to have 2 BBI rallies take place the day before we arrived. I think that was on Monday, and not one word was uttered, either even just in sympathy for what had happened, or a sense of responsibility that action would be taken. And I think the 2 members of parliament need to press this within their respective parties to make sure that as people are building bridges, they're not destroying homes.
There you go. Fatuma, the next few days, perhaps weeks, are going to be very difficult in terms of coming to terms with the surroundings within which you have to live. It's going to be hard. Looking at it now, just from a day to day, what do you need? What needs are clear that you have at this point before we even get to registering a new piece of a new area, before talking to government? What absolutely, so that we can have an understanding of what really is going on? What do you need?
What we need as the community, we want even the national government, especially Matiang, even the president, to come on the ground to see the situation we are suffering now as a community. We are homeless. So we are requesting the government, Mr. Matiang, plus the president, to come on the ground to help us as the community. And again, secondly, we want our land back, because we are sure that the land does not belong to Kenya Railway. And we want all the 109 acres to be given to the community with the ownership title deed. We want to remain on our land.
Yeah.
Because I remember very well when the Kenya Railway came, one of the officers, I cannot mention his name, he asked me, Fatuma, does your community have the ID? I told him that we are Kenyans. We have the title deed. We are voting. We are doing everything.
Yep.
So we are citizens of Kenya. One of the officers, I can't mention his name. He's from the Kenya Railway office, Kisumu. So I was wondering, why is he asking me such a question? Yeah.
Okay. It is basically lack of respect for people. Thank you very much, Fatuma, for speaking to us, and we wish you all the best, to you and the community. And we want to, at this point, applaud the organizations that are falling in. Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me. There is one of our youth who is being threatened now. He's in danger. He can't sleep. He can't be anywhere. He's being threatened by the person concerned with the eviction. Yeah. His life is in danger now.
Right. So that's something that also I'm sure Irungu will be able to work with the community on ensuring that this person's safety is guaranteed and assured as well. Thank you very much, Fatuma, and we wish you all the best. You and the community. I was about to say that we want to applaud the organizations that have taken up this matter. Amnesty International Kenya, the Red Cross, moving into with the humanitarian assistance. Asanteni sana. Irungu Houghton is the executive director of Amnesty International Kenya. You'll be following up this story with courts. We will also be following up this story to its logical conclusion, bringing in those who are answerable for this. The Kenya Railways, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Interior, the people, local leadership from county government to local. There's a local ward rep, there's a local MP. What is it that they know and what is it that they are doing to follow this matter through? Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is also time for us to take a break on KTN Home as well. But the conversation continues like we do every weekday morning on Spice FM. If you want to tune into Spice FM in Kisumu, it is 102.5. It's 87.9 in Mombasa, 94.4 in Nairobi. In Nakuru, it's 96.0. Eldoret, 96.7. Nyeri 90.9 and Malindi is 97.7. You can also catch this conversation online because we live stream the show, so you can just watch us on your mobile devices. Spice FM KE on Facebook, on YouTube and on Twitter. 4 minutes to 9. Good morning.
Spice FM Nyeri.
All right, so, when you hear this kind of conversation, on one hand, I want to sit back and think, by the time government officials at the level of Deputy County Commissioner, and the senior management of Kenya Railways are actually mobilizing to come to the ground, they also have something that they believe is what they're doing and that is right, because it's happening openly and publicly.
Maybe they've just been given an order. And they're obeying the orders.
And it will be the first time we've heard about this.
But I'm looking back at the conversations. If, for example, and Fatima is telling us, since 2019, they've had conversations.
15.
Even last year, there were Kenya Railways officers who came, July 31st, they came to the community and they said, all right, so as guys are coming and we'll be coming again, so this is what we intend to do, and we have this map. There's conflicting information here. Somewhere, there's a breakdown in communication.
Their communication was they simply wanted to demarcate their boundaries.
Their boundaries.
Okay? Some even communicated, according to Fatuma, that they had no interest in the land that this particular Kenyan community was living in.
Mm-hmm.
So what changed? What changed? How does somebody live? How do a group of people live in a piece of land for that length of time? There are two communities on this planet who are facing similar problems, but on a far more adverse scale. Okay? One is the group in China, the Uyghur group. Okay? They're Muslims. Then there you have Rohingya in Myanmar. These people forget they've been moved even out of the country. Okay? Now, what does this tell me? It tells me what happens when the floodgates of impunity are opened wide. So people just think they can get it. In China, they're saying they're re-educating these people. My friend, they're not re-educating these people. People are being jailed. People are being put in concentration camps. People are being killed. Now, impunity kills people. We were talking about Judy yesterday. Judy Wanjiku yesterday. Now we have a child who has died. A child who did not need to die because some people decided, because they felt they could do what they were told to do, displace these people, because that's what you've done. You're calling it eviction. They've displaced these people. A child has died in the process. Believe me, with all this rain, people who have pre-existing conditions are not going to fare well. And some may yet die. People who did not need to die.
Indeed. And especially even coming after the curfew time has started.
Yes.
To make sure that everybody is indoors.
They're in their homes.
Not only that, so curfew time doesn't apply to them.
Yeah.
They can
Make
do
sure
whatever
that
they
people are
want.
indoors and now then come and throw tear gas.
So what exactly were you trying to do?
What do you
What
want
was
them
the
to do?
point? What was the point
Yes.
of doing it in that manner?
Indeed. Well, we will follow this story to its logical conclusion, and you can rest assured of that. That's what we do right here in the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation.